There's a specific kind of tired you feel after an argument where you somehow ended up apologizing, and you're not totally sure what for. Not because something big happened. Just because somewhere in the middle of it, you lost track of what you were even saying. That's not just awkward conversation. That's a pattern. There are some phrases that are very good at doing one specific thing, making the other person stop trusting their own reaction. And the thing is, they work whether the person saying them knows what they're doing or not. Some people learn these from their parents. Some people use them when they feel cornered. Some genuinely think they're just stating facts. It doesn't really matter which one. They work either way. Here are 5 of them. You're too sensitive. When someone says this, it sounds like they're giving you information about yourself, like, this is a thing you should probably know. But what it actually does is change what the conversation is about. Before this, you were responding to something they said. After this, you're both talking about whether your response was valid. The thing they said is just kinda gone. And the weird part is, even if you know that's what just happened, you still end up asking yourself, am I being too sensitive? Maybe they didn't mean it like that. That question is the point. It also shows up in situations that aren't dramatic at all. A coworker says something that lands wrong. You mention it. They say you're reading too much into it, and suddenly you're the one who made things weird. And there's a version of this one you might recognize from the other side. If you've ever said, I was just joking, right after someone reacted, that's the same move, just softer. That's not what I said. This one's harder to catch because sometimes it's true. People do get misquoted. Sometimes you did mishear something. But there's a version that's different. It's when someone says something clearly. And then when you respond to it, they say that's not what they said. Not that you misunderstood, not that they said it poorly. Just, that's not what I said. And now you're trying to replay the conversation. Were those the exact words? What did they actually say? You're checking your own memory while the actual point you were making just sits there unaddressed. This one tends to compound. The first few times it happens in a relationship, romantic, friendship, work, doesn't matter. It just feels like a miscommunication. Over time, you start pre-qualifying everything you say. I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you start building in the apology before anyone asks for it. And again, sometimes people do this without any intention. They genuinely remember it differently. Memory isn't reliable, but the effect on the other person is the same either way. Here's what makes this one particularly hard to shake. When someone tells you that's not what they said, like often enough, confidently enough, you start to wonder if your memory is the problem, not just in that conversation, but in general. You start second-guessing what you heard in other situations too. You become a less reliable narrator of your own experience. And once that happens, the other person doesn't even need to argue with you anymore. You're already doing it yourself. The tell is the pattern. One misremembering is a misremembering. A habit of it, always in their favor, always when it matters. That's something else. I'm just being honest with you. Honesty is good. That part's not the issue. The thing about this phrase is where it shows up. It tends to come right after something that lands hard, and right before the person expects credit for saying it. There's a version of this that's real. A friend who tells you something uncomfortable because they genuinely care what happens to you. That exists, and it's useful. But there's another version where I'm just being honest is basically a disclaimer. It means I'm about to say something I'd normally soften, but I'm framing it as courage, and if you react to it badly, that's on you for not appreciating honesty. The tell is usually in the specifics. Honest feedback tends to be about a particular thing in a particular situation. It usually comes with some sense that it might be hard to hear. It has something to do with actually helping you. The other version tends to be general. A little personal, mostly making a point. Most people have used this one at some point, framing something as honesty to make it harder to push back on. It works on others, and it works on yourself. There's something else worth noticing about this phrase. Real honesty doesn't usually need the disclaimer. When a friend tells you something genuinely hard, they don't usually lead with, I'm just being honest. They just say the thing, carefully, because the relationship matters. The phrase tends to show up when the honesty is the weapon, not the point. It's armor. Pre-built defense against you reacting. Before you've even responded, you've already been told that reacting badly is a character flaw. And there's a version of this one that doesn't use the word honest at all. I'm just saying. No offense, but don't take this the wrong way. Same structure. The content comes first, the exit hatch comes second, and you're left holding whatever they said with no clean way to address it. Everyone thinks so. Or, I'm not the only one who feels this way. Or, I've talked to people about this. This one adds an invisible audience. The thing about an invisible audience is you can't argue with it. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they actually said. You just know they exist and they agree. So now you're not pushing back on one person. You're somehow pushing back on everyone. And most people don't want to do that. So they don't. It doesn't even need to be many people. My sister mentioned the same thing as one person, but it still creates this sense that you're the outlier. It shows up in families a lot. Your father agrees with me. We've all noticed. You suddenly feel like you're being voted on. There's a smaller version of this one too, more subtle. Most people would just, or any reasonable person would. No names, no quote. Just a vague majority that somehow all happen to side with the person talking to you. You always do this. Or, this is such a you thing. Or, here we go again. This one sounds like a pattern observation, like someone has been watching you for a while and is finally just saying something. But what it usually does is swap the current situation for a character verdict. Instead of, this specific thing happened, and here's what I think about it. It becomes, here's who you are. And that's much harder to respond to. You can explain a specific action, you can give context, you can say what you meant, but you always do this doesn't have anything specific in it to address. It's just a general statement about how you are. So now you're defending your whole personality instead of talking about what actually happened. The current situation, whatever it was, is just still sitting there. And the longer this goes on in a relationship, the more you start to accept the verdict. You start saying things like, I know I have a tendency to, before anyone even accuses you of anything. You preemptively admit to being the problem. That shift, from responding to something specific to defending your entire character, that's worth noticing. Honey? There's a trap built into this one that's easy to fall into. The more you try to defend yourself against, you always do this, the more it looks like you're proving their point. If you get frustrated, you're emotional. If you bring up a counterexample, you're being defensive. If you go quiet, you're sulking. Every response becomes evidence. The verdict was already decided before you opened your mouth. The only way out is to bring it back to the specific. Maybe I do have patterns. Let's talk about this specific thing that happened right now. It doesn't always work. But it's the only move that doesn't play into it. None of these phrases automatically mean someone is trying to manipulate you. Some people learned them. Some use them when they feel backed into a corner. Some genuinely believe what they're saying. But if you keep leaving conversations feeling worse than when you went in, a little less sure of yourself, a little more apologetic, and you can't quite point to why, it's worth paying attention to which words keep showing up. Not to win an argument, not to collect evidence against someone, just to know the difference between someone pushing back on what you said and someone pushing back on your right to have said it. That's what a blind spot is, not something hidden from you on purpose. Just something you didn't have the frame for yet. Now you do. If this gave you a frame you didn't have before, subscribe. There's more coming. Same channel, same angle. We look at the things that are hard to see until someone names them. See you in the next one.